What's up, everybody? It's Josh coming at you from Nerdvengers Tower. And oh, baby, am I excited to talk to you about Moon Knight and the connections revealed in episode 3 to Kang the Conqueror and Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and Thor, Love, and Thunder. I, like many of you, were probably enjoying Moon Knight, but kind of thinking, man, this doesn't have those usual Marvel Easter eggs or connection to the wider MCU canon. But alas, seems like it's got a few of those. So let's first talk about the Kang Easter egg. We'll sort of end up on how that could tie into Love and Thunder and some of the things we just saw in that beautiful teaser trailer. Shout out to Eric Voss and New Rockstars for discovering this in episode 3. One of the characters, in fact, the one that gets sort of thrown off the cliff, or he cuts himself off the thing and then he falls off the cliff. Yeah, that dude. On the back of his jacket is an undeniable Rama Tut Easter egg, which the New Rockstars team confirmed from somebody on the set of Moon Knight to be an intentional Kang the Conqueror Easter egg. Rama Tut is the pharaoh that's essentially Nathaniel Richards, aka the Kang the Conqueror character, when he goes back in time. He goes back in time, goes to Egypt, and wows everybody with his cool magic from the future that's really just super advanced technology, and he becomes pharaoh. Also, on a side note here, I think it's just awesome that in the comic books, Rama Tut, when Kang leaves that timeline, he leaves technology and hidden clues to help the Egyptians later find Ansaba-Nur, who of course is Apocalypse. But that's for another video. Let's get into the Kang and what this means about Kang and him messing with the Egyptian gods. It's explained in episode 3 during that very crazy dialogue sequence amongst the Anad, or the Egyptian gods, that they did not abandon humanity. Rather, humanity abandoned them. And when this happened, they decided not to meddle with human affairs and left our plane for the Overvoid. The Overvoid is some kind of pocket dimension away from Earth where they can stay safe, observe what's going on Earth, and act through their avatar. This is also in the booklets that Stephen Grant has earlier on in the episode, and a lot of people have been talking about this online, but essentially this event known as the Great Rift or the Big Rift was this moment when humanity sort of turns away from the gods. Now, what we can surmise or guess is that He Who Remains, or rather a variant of He Who Remains, likely Kang the Conqueror, went back in time and causes the Great Rift. If you think about it, Kang going back in time, showing everybody his cool scientific magic stuff to become pharaoh, to be thought of as a god, would be a sort of shifting for the belief of the people of Egypt. They'd probably believe less in the older gods and choose to believe now in Kang, especially if Kang decided, as Rama Tut, to outlaw the worshiping of these different gods, or heavily influence man to worship him instead. Now, there are a couple of ways that this could be working within the MCU continuity. This could all have been done by He Who Remains already, or perhaps it's being done in the second go through now that the sacred timeline has been freed from a Kang the Conqueror. Because we see all sorts of clues and Easter eggs about Egypt in the Loki series. You'll recall there's a Sphinx and I believe even a shot of a pyramid in that void with the weird fog monster that He Who Remains used to win the first multiversal war. There are also a bunch of Egyptian-styled cups, glasses, and trinkets all seen in the room that He Who Remains ends up at the end of Loki. And even the way he dresses looks slightly Egyptian. And so it's possible that character, trying to create the sacred timeline, decided to take the gods out of the picture, going back into time for that moment in Egypt and choosing to create that great rift and cause humanity to turn against the gods. Those gods then retreat to the Overvoid. And the Overvoid is really interesting. That concept in and of itself does tie into a lot of different things we've seen established already in the MCU when it comes to the gods. First of all, Asgard itself is seen as something like its own realm or dimension that is separate from the rest of the 9 realms, including Earth and other places that we see Thor and his friends take the Rainbow Bridge to. And in the new trailer for Thor Love and Thunder, which by the way I thought was freaking dope, we see Olympus, or some version of Olympus, with Zeus himself. This looks to be another sort of realm or dimension from where the gods of the old Greek time are still hanging out and just observing over Earth. And even in Shang-Chi, we see this different realm, Tao Lao, where they worship the Great Protector. And that civilization there has all this crazy technology, and they look after protecting that mountain and stopping the Dweller in Darkness from coming out there. And then even in Black Panther, we see this otherworldly realm where the Panthers get to go to have conversations with each other. All of the different people that have been Black Panther before reside there, and the Panther god of Bast is rumored to play some kind of a role in the next Black Panther movie. And although we don't have the full picture of how that will play out in the MCU, in the comic books, Bast is the sister of Khonshu. They're both the children of like the sun god from the Enald, from the sort of hierarchy of Egyptian gods. And so it's even possible that Bast will work something similar to what we're seeing these other Egyptian gods do in Moon Knight, and that perhaps the heart-shaped herb in that ceremony is some way to give Avatar-like powers, just like the powers that Moon Knight has, to a mortal. And I'm going to even go further and believe that with all the heart-shaped herb destroyed, that the Panther god Bast herself will now have to directly give the power of Black Panther to a person rather than have them just have the heart-shaped herb. And by the way, in the comic books, Shuri stands before Bast and tries to get that power and become worthy, and she is judged unworthy and told to go basically work on herself. And honestly, all of this is really cool, showing us that there's a lot of thought into how the different gods within the MCU will be interacting with mortals, what the rules are, and the likelihood that many of them have retreated into other pocket dimensions away from Earth. But this is what brings me to another crazy theory about Thor Love and Thunder. In the comic books, the character of Gorr gets this weapon called the all-black necro sword and then goes on a purposeful vendetta murder spree of all these different gods. Essentially, the TLDR is that Gorr starts out as a mortal, witnesses gods come into his realm, do all kinds of havoc, and really just make things horrible for his people. And so then he goes on a whole path of revenge, eventually finding the all-black necro sword, utilizing the power of that weapon, which is a crazy strong freaking weapon, to take out all of these different gods. But we know that Kevin Feige likes to change things up. From the comic books, he very rarely does a direct adaptation of anything from Marvel Comics and instead does a sort of twist on it. And with Kang being the big bad, the sort of Thanos of this next phase of Marvel, you can bet that many different movies, and particularly their villains, will be tied to Kang in some interesting way. This could include Ahmet in Moon Knight, but could also include Gorr the God Butcher in Thor Love and Thunder. Because think about it, if Kang went back in time to remove power from the Egyptian gods, and if Kang views the powers of different gods as a challenge to his ability to control the multiverse, then he would definitely be trying to take them out. And what if in the MCU, the all-black necro sword is not an ancient symbiote weapon created by Null, the symbiote god, but is instead some kind of advanced technology and magical weapon that is created by Kang the Conqueror. And one of the reasons I think this could be the case is because Feige's very likely changing things to actually distance himself from what Sony is doing with their Sony Marvel universe of characters and their Spider-Verse stuff. Even though I and many other Marvel fans absolutely love the character of Null and would love to be that the direction that they take with Gorr, let's just face facts. Feige seems to be distancing himself from Sony, and after that stinker Morbius movie, you can't really blame him. And so I really feel like he might be changing it up. And to sort of double down on a point I made earlier in the video, Feige also utilized all kinds of different movies and villains to be connected to the Infinity Stones that eventually were connected to Thanos. I mean, in the first Guardians movie, it's made abundantly clear Ronan is gifted an Infinity Stone from Thanos to have him go out and do his dirty work. Now, part of the reason this likely was is because Thanos knew if he was actively engaged in just straight up using the Infinity Stones, it would tip off all of these different cosmic entities, possibly even gods or celestials, and then they would form some kind of coalition to stop him. I believe that is why he was using the stones via proxies to have all these different machinations happening in the universe. I think Kang the Conqueror would likely be doing the same thing, and it's possible that Gorr will be revealed to be some kind of a pawn of Kang's, and we may well see many different villains coming up in the MCU end up being pawns of Kang the Conqueror. So those are the connections and the crazy theory about how it all could be working together, because I definitely think we're heading towards a multiversal war. I think Secret Wars in some form is coming. And oh, by the way, Doctor Doom, who is said to be established in Wakanda forever, could also be observing the different things that are going on and maybe working to eventually stop Kang and or join Kang or take over Kang's role. Basically, it's getting pretty crazy out here. So let me know what you think about it all in the comment section below. Like this video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel to see more of our content pop up in your recommended feed, and go check out our live streaming channel. If you have a question about something we covered in this video, you can come ask me live over there. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.